Bill is the executive director of the Green Energy Ohio, which is a statewide nonprofit in Ohio promoting renewable energy, just like GLREA. And they've been doing the annual solar home tour down in Ohio since 2003. So they've done 11 annual tours, which has reached thousands of people. They've been instrumental in 180 clean energy installations across 104 communities in Ohio. Both GEO and GLREA are state chapters of the American Solar Energy Society, and Bill has been very active in ASUS. He chaired the 2007 ASUS conference in Cleveland, which attracted over 5,000 people and 160 exhibitors. And Bill was appointed to the ASUS Board of Directors back in 2002, where he represents the state chapters. Bill is an attorney, received his law degree from Ohio State University, which we won't hold against him. And he was Ohio's first Consumers Counsel from 1977 to 1993. And there he represented 4 million residential customers in Ohio in over 1,200 public utility proceedings. And I was in the Public Service Commission for 10 years, and it boggles my mind, 1,200 public utility proceedings. And so Bill has achieved many awards over the years, but I really think he deserves sainthood for the work he did on behalf of the residential customers in Ohio all those years. So with that, let me give the microphone to St. Bill.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's a pleasure to be here in Michigan. I drove through a lot of Ohio to get here. We're dropping off our tour materials on our tour all across the state, and we were down in Toledo doing the last drop of signs. I don't know, how many of you have been on a solar tour, seen a solar home? How many people live in a solar home? Oh, this is good. You've got some right here. This is great. When we started 13 years ago, that was something we didn't have a lot of. I've put outside, before I start the presentation, this is our tour magazine. And our tour is 4 days. It's October 3, 4, 5, and 6. And on the 5th, we have some guided tours. If you're interested in seeing a big wind farm, there are 2 of them in Ohio, south of Toledo, several counties south. And that's a good opportunity to see how these operate. Okay. See, I need to.
Should be coming up.
Okay. So what I want to do is touch on 4 subjects here. And some of you in the room may know a lot about this, and some of you may not. So I'm going to try to reach everyone here as best I can. I'm going to talk about what is renewable energy and give you some examples. And I'm going to use Ohio as the example because that's the main thing I know about. But, you know, we're very much like Michigan in so many ways. So I want to also talk about who invented renewable energy and who's reinventing it. And then I want to show you an overview of what's happening around the world, because this is really a global industry. And I think if you haven't looked at this, you'll find some interesting facts, particularly as we hear the political debate about green energy here in America at the state level and the federal level. It's important to see what the rest of the world is doing. And I want to talk about the policy drivers here in the States and also globally. So first, again, let's define renewable energy. Solar, wind, biomass, hydro, that's our logo. And those are the 4 that we talk about. We're primarily working on solar and wind, although biomass in Ohio is probably our biggest resource, but the most undeveloped, and I'm sure that may be true of Michigan as well. So this is a photovoltaic system, kind of a simple schematic. I'm a recovering lawyer, so I don't try to throw up all these detailed engineering slides, but we have a photovoltaic effect that was discovered in the last 2 centuries ago, but it was really Bell Labs in the 1950s that developed it. It got into the first satellites, and it essentially is the direct conversion of sunlight. Sometimes there are batteries involved, and then the big thing is you need an inverter, because when a solar array is put up, it's creating direct current, so it has to be inverted or converted to alternating current so we can use it. And so a solar system would have the solar panels and what we call balance of systems. It would have the steel supports if necessary, and it would have the electronics. And the cost of solar has come down dramatically, as you may or may not know. This is a solar water heating system. This is the Jimmy Carter era. When you hear about the Jimmy Carter and the solar panels, they were thermal panels. And back in the 80s, and a lot of us went through that. This is actually more efficient capturing the heat from the sun. And actually, Michigan has a much bigger solar thermal industry than Ohio, even though you're farther north. So, you know, all of us face the problem. It's a great day to sell solar today when it's sunny outside. But if it were raining out there, people say, well, this stuff doesn't work. The reality, it works. And I'll show you an example of Germany, which is the leading solar country in the world, how they compare. This is something that architects know all about, and again, is something they knew about for centuries. A lot of old buildings show all these concepts of passive solar. If we took the buildings in the United States and faced them south and used the passive solar effects, we could save energy 20% almost automatically just by how we design buildings. And so buildings are so important, and this school is so important because these are the future leaders who are going to design the buildings that we live and work in. And I could go into some of the detail, but the idea here I think you get is that we can use the sun's heat and we can design buildings that take advantage of that. This is a simplified wind generator. Again, an inverter. This one is going into the grid. It could serve a house or a business on site, what we call behind the meter, and I'll show you some more about this. This is the parts, simplified wind turbine. There are 8,000 parts in the big boys. These are the 30-story wind turbines on this tour. We have 200 in Ohio that are 1.5 to 2 megawatt wind turbines. So 8,000 parts. Somebody has to make those parts, and I'll show you something about that, the supply chain. This is where the green jobs come in. And these are something we now see all over the world. This is low-impact hydro. This is the idea of hydro that does not destroy the environment. A lot of the river environmental groups are very sensitive to this, and the idea is to put in hydro systems that don't disrupt fish and other parts of the environment. And this, again, I apologize, is a kind of an engineering diagram, but biomass is burning of either, it could be animal waste, it could be food waste, it could be, you know, all kinds of different things that are combusted. For example, landfill gas, methane, is a function. So there are many, many technologies that are biomass, and usually there is a combustion component of that. And they actually have to comply with the air standards and sometimes violate them. So there is a burning effect there often with the biomass. So here's a teaser. Which state has the largest green energy tour? Which state's wind farm is the largest of the largest wind developer in the world, which happens to be in Spain, Iberdrola? Which state has the most green schools in the nation? You see California up there. Which has the plan for the first freshwater wind farm, and which has the largest proposed solar farm? All of these, of course, are Ohio. And so, as I said, our tour is coming up next weekend, and we are very excited about that. A lot of great things on it. Pick up a magazine, you'll see some pictures all around the state. The largest wind farm of the largest developer is Iberdrola's Blue Creek Wind Farm. It is the largest private investment in the state of Ohio. It's $600 million in 2011, bigger than auto plants, bigger, you know, so as we're facing a withering attack in our state legislature, this is important to show legislators that, you know, the biggest investment in our state has been a wind farm. and there's more coming. Most green schools, this is really interesting. We have more LEED certified schools in the state of California because California has been a leader in this. But that's something that we're proud of, and we have a lot of schools that are doing a lot of energy efficiency in particular, and some have giant solar arrays. The plan for the world's first freshwater wind farm, I'm going to show you this because this is pretty unique and innovative. It's called Icebreaker because essentially no one has put a wind farm in a freshwater setting or a Great Lake that ices over, and that's a concern. And then the largest proposed solar farm, this has been initially rejected by our state regulators, but the fellow that's pushing this is still trying to get this put together. It's a great story. It is on strip mine land that used to strip the land away, the big muskie with electric. It's land they can't even grow anything on. And all these electric wires come into it. It's in southeast Ohio, right in the heart of our coal country. And it would be fantastic. It would be 800 acres of solar that would go right into the utility grid of American Electric Power. So here's our tour again, and we divide our state into 5 regions. And you can see that we've done this for quite a while. We have over 100 sites on the tour this year. But I wanted to show you this map of Ohio and then Germany. That's Bavaria, essentially. And you can see that the Germans have more solar and more wind than any country in the world. And yet they have the sunlight of Anchorage, Alaska. And they're really, if you've been to Germany, when you go to the Baltic, they're at the 60th parallel. They'd be like up in Canada if they were in North America. And you can see in Ohio, most of our sun, the insulation's on the western edge. That's the lake effect as you get over to Cleveland that comes off the lake. But every county has some form of renewable energy, and that's kind of my vision, that someday our tour will have a site in all 88 counties of the state of Ohio. So this gentleman on the left is a former professor at Ohio State, Marlon Languis, and that's where our tour starts in Columbus. And this is another professor at the Ag Tech Institute in my hometown of Worcester, Ohio. And both these gentlemen use their solar array to charge their electric cars. They drive on solar. Talk about getting us off of oil, using the sun to charge your electric car. And of course, we're both car states, so this is a big opportunity for us to really make a dent going forward and for future generations, I think. This fellow works in our office, so the guy who answers the phone, Barry Adler, is really an organic farmer. He works for us part-time, and this is his bio-integrated greenhouse. It's off-grid. It's in Plain City, just near Columbus. And you see he has wind and solar thermal, solar PV, electric, and passive. And these are the kind of sites we try to educate people with. We take them to these sites and show them how they can do this also. And I want to talk now about the churches, because we've been very close to Interfaith Power and Light. Sister Paula Gonzalez, who's now an emeritus member of our board, she's one of only two people we've given our Lifetime Achievement Award to. She's a Catholic nun with the Sisters of Charity on the west side of Cincinnati. And she helped found Interfaith Power and Light along with a Presbyterian elder. My wife, Faye, who's with me today, is an elder in the Presbyterian church we go to, and I'm a former or past elder, I guess. This is the Sylvania United Church, and Sylvania, you may know, is very close to Michigan. I think it's almost on the line, right north. It's a northern suburb of Toledo. And this was the very first church to put solar up. And the professor at the University of Toledo, which is one of the leading solar research institutions in the United States, is the University of Toledo. Several solar companies have come out of that. And of course, Michigan has solar companies also. Michigan and Ohio are two of the leading Midwest states in terms of actually having companies that make solar, and it comes from the university systems. So this was on our tour several years ago, the very first church. This is the First Unitarian Church of Cleveland. It's actually in Shaker Heights. And if you look at the bottom here, you can see how much it produces. This is a canopy that goes over a parking lot, and there's an electric car charger there. And this is in the church parking lot. And if you go onto our tour website, all of our sites are online. You can get a lot more detail about that. But I think it's interesting to see that we have churches that are doing this in Ohio. This, again, is a church in my hometown of Worcester. This is on the Unitarian Fellowship of Wayne County. That's Wayne County, Ohio, which is a small rural county in Ohio. The solar array offsets a significant amount of electricity. And this is the one I wanted to focus on because this was one of the first LEED churches, and I'll show you some of the detail here. But this is an aerial shot. When they built the LEED building first, and this is probably the way you should do this, is you try to be as efficient as you can before you invest in a more expensive renewable system. And that's the church. The sanctuary is below the solar arrays there. And this is the explanation. This is right on their tour site. So if you were to go to our tour site, this is what you'd see in Worcester. So the first thing they talk about is you can see they're talking about how much they spend to purchase electricity each year. So they're looking at electric bill. And then they talk about how much of carbon dioxide, and you can calculate that. We're a heavy coal-fired state because we have coal we can't burn, essentially being imported into Ohio, but we have huge coal generators. And so, you know, for every kilowatt hour we can turn green in Ohio, we're actually moving away from burning coal. So then electric prices have gone up 50%. Now, my wife's head of the stewardship committee and is meeting with the finance committee and is looking at the expenses of a church. And so, you know, what expenses of a church go up that much when you think about it? And that's one that most people can't avoid. The PV system will reduce by more than 90% the life cycle carbon emissions of electricity. And so they're looking at the entire life cycle, which is the way to look at that, to look at the savings. And so it says at the bottom line is that it reduces the environmental impact and the operating costs. So when you talk about a warming world, you talk about creation care, this is what a church is saying in our state. And I think this again is looking at the example of one with a large solar array. Most of what Ohio Interfaith Power and Light is doing at this hour is energy efficiency. And they're getting a lot of rebate help from our big utilities in Ohio. And that's pretty exciting to see. We're going to be doing an event with Ohio Interfaith Power and Light next May in Worthington, Ohio. And there are big churches. It'll be a market day. And we're going to try to bring all the faith community to Worthington to talk about what they're doing, to try to help educate the interfaith community. So now I'm just going to run through here some more. This is, we have schools like this in Ohio that have megawatt scale of solar. We have about 60 megawatts of solar in the ground in Ohio right now. We're 11th in the country in new solar installations. We're the 7th largest state. And this is Centerville, Ohio, in a rural county, getting 80% of its power from the sun in a rural county of Ohio. And the company that's doing this, they want to do 21 more of these. There's 2 more of these around Columbus. And this is third-party owned, so it doesn't cost the school much. It's actually private investors that own the solar array. And usually these agreements are they sell the power at less than the utility rate, and then after so many years, the school could actually buy the solar array. So this is really happening, and I call this the stealth revolution. You're starting to see articles that the utilities are beginning to fear now solar because it's a grassroots movement. Every 4 minutes in the United States of America, a solar array is being installed every 4 minutes. And again, these are industries that are not big enough to pound away like the fossil or the nuclear industry and show you TV ads on the hour. But it's quietly happening, and it's happening, we see it across our state. This is the Cincinnati Zoo. This is the cover of our magazine several years ago. They have a big canopy, 1.6 megawatts, and when they put it up, it was more solar than all the zoos in the United States put together. So now what's happening is our zoos are competing with each other. When I was in Toledo yesterday, I found out the Toledo Zoo wants to put up 2 megawatts that'll be bigger, and the Columbus Zoo wants to be. Well, I'll tell you what's great about zoos. More people go to a zoo than any other entity in a city. You know, there are two people that are best known from Columbus. One's Woody Hayes, but the other is Jack Hanna, the Columbus Zoo. And so we love zoos because they're public, they're open all the time. It's a great place to demonstrate renewable energy. This is the wind map of Ohio. And I know there's a map like this of Michigan, and I understand there's a lot of wind farms going into the thumb of Michigan, but I just wanted to focus on what I know about. The darker the color here, the higher the wind speed. And the Bell Fountain Ridge is to the northwest of Columbus, which is this area. You think of Appalachia in Ohio, but the highest point in Ohio is really, I never make it as a professor.
Your clothes match.
Anyway, yeah, I know. What can I say? This one, the red button. The red button. Okay, here's Columbus, right? These are power lines, by the way. Ohio is the 18th largest energy economy in the world. I'm talking about countries. California is bigger. But we have 40-some power plants. We have 2 nukes, one here and one here. And these are huge coal plants. The General Gavin plant's 2,600 megawatts, 11 stories tall boiler. And so along the Ohio River, you need water to cool off fossil units, either rivers or lakes. But these are the power lines, some of the biggest in the world coming up from the Ohio River. This is the Bell Fountain Ridge. This is the highest point in Ohio, 1,500 feet above sea level. And so these are better wind speeds. And this is Lake Erie that I'll talk about in a second, which has even higher. And the first wind farms are up in here, and I'll show you that. But I just wanted to show you that, we're a big energy manufacturing state like Michigan. And I want to show you some more of this. As a nonprofit, we're kind of unique. We've actually done wind tests, which take a year. We put up a meteorological tower, or we hire steeplejacks to go up on a tall tower, and we measure wind speed for a year. Before somebody invests in a wind turbine, you have to know you have enough wind to make it economic. And you can see most of these are along the lake counties up here. The farthest south, we've actually gone into the Ohio Valley, but normally this area where the Wisconsin Glacier stopped, the Ohio Valley is not as windy. So the wind map I showed you is up here. And these are all public. The wind farms, it's like prospecting for oil. They don't make their wind tests public. So we have public data. This is where the wind farms are in Ohio, and our tour is going to be of these two up here, Timber Road and Blue Creek. This is the big one here. And we're going to be at Vantage Career Center. It has a megawatt of solar sitting next to it. It was just put in this year, and then we're going to go up into the wind farms. These are the others that are under construction. So you can see Ohio over here. This is the land-based wind. This is where most of it is. There are 8 more wind farms being planned in Ohio. We're talking about billions of dollars of investment. And pick up this. This is a farm couple here from a landowner perspective. You hear a lot about the people opposing wind farms, but it's interesting when you talk to the farmers and why they like the wind farms. One reason is because they are paid lease payments. This is the cover of our magazine several years ago. It's so windy in that part of Ohio, they have to put the wind turbines up at night. And these are iron workers up here. This is 300 feet above the ground. This is the nacelle, or the turbine. Here are the rotors, and you have to have a crane big enough. It usually takes 2 cranes to build the big crane, then they start moving it to each site. And so they're working at night, and that's something that I think is kind of a stark picture. It's kind of hard to imagine that men are putting up this giant machine at night. And so here are some of the facts about the big wind farm in Ohio, the biggest one, 152 turbines. The payment to the county is bigger than the top 14 taxpayers. A lot of it's going to the schools. And we have a very wind-friendly tax system. And the landowners are getting $2 million a year for 20 years. So they have an economic interest in that. This is I'm going to shift now totally. This is one of my few biomass pictures, but I just wanted to show you how local biomass is and what the different kinds of biomass. It's not just rural. This was done by an Ohio State professor. It shows dairies, which I think are these, can't see which spots they are, but you can see these are existing power plants, which means that there are wires coming out. And then you have food processing plants. Then you have urban waste, and you can see where the big cities, this is Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, Dayton's over here. So you can see that biomass has a lot of potential across a whole lot of sectors as we go forward. We have something called Quasar that's using food waste in Ohio to make electricity, and they have several of their sites. So I just wanted to show you that if I were to show you a map of biomass, that would be the map. So I want to just talk for a second about who invented this, because, you know, we take a lot of bad raps. There's still people that think, you know, renewables are Californians who sit under trees and eat nuts and berries, and, you know, they've seen the wind turbines out in California. Well, hopefully we're getting past this. This is a research slide that the National Renewable Lab puts together, and I show this not to see whether you want to test your eyesight, but just to show you. Since '75, this shows how we have increased the efficiency of the photovoltaic cells. And these are the names of labs. And it's interesting, when you look about before 2000, they're all American labs. And now you start to see international labs coming in and perfecting solar. The thin film, the second generation photovoltaics, where we use glass, Toledo being the glass city, they use a piece of glass and lay a substrate on it of different chemicals to produce a thin film photovoltaic system. Unisolar did that up here in Michigan also. So you can see the big story, the upshot is that we continue as humans to increase the ability to capture the sun's electricity. And I don't know where this stops, you know. I'm not a physicist, but I can say that, you know, what you're seeing are the same size panels with more power production on them. And so it's an industry that has not reached its full potential at this point. So that's where the innovation is. This is the roof of First Solar at Perrysburg. It's on the Ohio Turnpike. And this was subsidized by our state. I think several states, it might have been Detroit, Edison tried to steal it away. I know North Carolina did. It's still there. It's actually huge now. The owners are actually out in Phoenix. But I'll talk about that some more. Let me talk about our own innovation. I think this is innovative. We took a Volt around Ohio about a year ago, an electric car, and we had 5 stops, and we did back-to-back ride and drives. We didn't know at the time, a year ago, there were only 30,000 electric cars in the whole United States of America, only 30,000. Now there are hundreds of thousands. And we learned a lot. We discovered that Thomas Edison had a vision to use electric cars at homes that were powered by wind. And he wanted to charge his electric cars on the first trolley systems. And of course, the gasoline car won out, and the rest is history. And of course, Edison made that famous statement. And before he died in 1931, he said, we need to harness the sun. That's where the potential is, because he said, we are going to run out of gas and oil. This is Thomas Edison saying this. And so we just went all through Ohio evoking the spirit of Thomas Edison, who was born in Ohio. So, you know, it was an interesting thing. We went to all these places, and what's happening now is just amazing. We just had an annual meeting. We had 8 Teslas there. The Midwest Repair Center is in Dublin, Ohio. And so I showed you on our tour, we have people charging with solar and wind, and you put the smart grid with that. I mean, the young people, I think, have a very bright future on the energy side of how America can adjust to the problems and get us out of fighting wars for oil over in the Middle East. So here's the big history factoid. This is Charles Brush, who is a contemporary of Edison, and this is his wind turbine that sat on Euclid Avenue in Cleveland. It sat there 12 years. It had big batteries in his mansion. He was an inventor and businessman. And in 1890, it was on the front page of Scientific American. And so Cleveland, Ohio, a Clevelander, invented the first electric wind turbine. A lot of people in Cleveland still don't know this. And if you go to the Dutch, the Yeah, it's the Dutch wind industry website. He's kind of the hero of the Danes because they took wind and really ran with it. And they talk about Charles Brush. Then farther down in the 70s, again during the Carter era, this is the MOD, which was the Americans, and this was at NASA Lewis, it's now NASA Glenn, where they took airplane propellers and tried to figure out how do you turn them into rotors. And in the 70s, they tried to develop a 5 megawatt machine, which is just in the last 5 years really started to be possible. And the Americans tried to go too big, too fast. And so this is NASA Lewis. This is 1975 National Geographic picture. And all of this, you know, when oil embargo happened in the 80s, kind of went away for a while, and we gave it to the Danes. So the other innovative thing I want to talk about is that our little nonprofit put a stake in the lake. This is the water crib. It's 100 years old. This is the main intake. There are now 2 of them for the city of Cleveland. It's 3.5 miles offshore. You can see solar arrays here. We put the 50-meter tower. It's still the highest elevation wind test in any of the Great Lakes. And this shows the wind speed we collected, shows that this was in 2004. And from this now, there is a big effort in Cuyahoga County to put 6 turbines. They have a federal grant, and it's called Icebreaker, to put a wind farm for the first time anywhere in the world offshore. This is the potential for the Great Lakes of putting wind in the lakes. Now, it's much more expensive to put this in water than it is in a cornfield. And so you got to put a lot of these out there to make it economic, but somebody has to be first. And the Clevelanders are stepping up, and it'll be interesting to see. They've got a lot of barriers to accomplish this. This is the supply chain for wind, just looking at Ohio, and we're the #1 state. And you can see Cuyahoga County, Cleveland, but you can also see down here Montgomery, Dayton, and Hamilton, Cincinnati, all over, even in rural areas. There are 120 companies that are supplying parts. Obama, the day before he took office, was in Cleveland, and he was holding up a big bolt, because there are big bolts that go into putting these machines up, the wind turbines. And I'm sure Michigan's in this supply chain also. So let me shift here to say that as of 2013, and Faye researched this for me, we have identified this one report I'm going to show you here. 127 countries, more than 2/3 of developing countries have renewable energy support policies. So we've been talking about America and Ohio, but the reality is that this is a global enterprise. And I think this is the good news, friends, because no war has ever been fought over solar. And the sun falls equally on all land. So the reality here is that renewables made up just over half of the new additions of all electric capacity in the world. And it's true of the United States, most of it was wind last year. So you hear a lot about natural gas and the fracking and all of that, but the reality is that renewables comprise 26% of the world's global generating capacity. In the United States, about half of the electric additions in wind power, as I said. China, and you'll see the rising of China here, which 5 years ago wasn't even on the radar. They have increased their generation, their wind power generation has increased more than coal, which is a good thing if you're following the climate negotiations and all of that. So in the European Union, 70%. 70% of all new power being added is wind in Europe. And you can see in Germany, almost 23% of electric consumption. In fact, there was one day last summer, Germany ran on solar power. Germany is a huge industrial country. So it's estimated that 5.7 million people worldwide are working on renewable energy. And this is something that we invented a lot of this stuff, and we can really help the world in a collaborative way become a greener planet. So just to show you some rankings, this is really interesting. Power capacity, not including hydro, because hydro is a 100-year-old technology, but you can see who the leaders are. And the United States is behind China, Germany. You see these European countries. My wife and I were just over in the Mediterranean in Italy and saw huge solar arrays in Tuscany and in the Venice area. This is the top 5 countries by types of renewable energy. And you can see that the United States leads in biomass. Geothermal is where like Old Faithful, where the heat is coming right out of the ground and we attach it to a turbine. You see these out in Nevada a lot. Here's solar PV, and there's Germany, Italy, United States, and then solar hot water. And you see a lot of this in the Mediterranean. So let's get back to the US. The Renewable Portfolio Standard requires utilities to buy a percentage of power. And you can see Ohio and Michigan, the percentages and the dates. The Koch brothers and the conservative legislative group ALEC has launched an effort in 22 states to roll back these standards. They have not succeeded in a single state, but I can tell you that there's a lot of lobbyists down in Columbus right now. The bill came out to change this, who are trying to hang on to all the success we've had. So we're going to have to, as a industry, as you mature, the wind conference we had, a WIA conference, I saw John Sarver at this past week, you know, that there were protesters there. So now there are people saying we don't want wind, you know, and they have various arguments. And frankly, I personally think you can't put wind everywhere, and people should have the right to determine where to put it. I think solar is a lot easier because it doesn't have a lot of the siting problems. But this is the picture of the United States, a renewable standard. This is something that's really helped Ohio is we have a solar carve-out. And so the carve-out really has helped our solar industry. So you can see in Ohio under the law, this is required by law, that by the year down here at the bottom, 2024, 1/2% has to be solar. And in these early years, we've already gone past it. So that's what I'm saying. This thing is just taking off from our point of view, and we want to keep it that way. Now, jobs, it's all about jobs, stupid. This is what we're trying to get across. And this is really interesting. This is actually a study, I think, from, is this Lawrence Berkeley down here? I can't read it. But this shows, here's solar, because this is manufactured energy. So this is why renewables cost so much, because we're having to manufacture the solar or the wind, but then the fuel is free. Our fuel source comes up every day in the east. It doesn't have to be put on ships. It doesn't have to be put in pipelines. It doesn't do anything to the water or the air. And if we can bring those prices down, and First Solar has shown that it can, you know, the cost curve is coming down, we can employ people. And then you've got all the jobs of installing this. Now the big problem I see is, are we going to be putting up all Chinese solar panels, or are we going to still be making them here in the Midwest? Now obviously it's a world market, and you know, we're probably going to be doing both. That's what's happening right now. What we need to do is be putting American panels over in China too. I mean, you can look at it that way, right? So let's go on to the next one here. I think that concludes what I have to say, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if I have time left. Do I have time left? Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, a question about wind in northern Ohio near Lake Erie. I know that there are people I know that from the Black Swamp Bird Observatory and others that are concerned about that this is also one of the biggest stopover areas for migratory songbirds, and it's also a great place for wind.
Yes.
Reconcile those, and it seems like there needs to be some siting and design considerations there, so we're not generating wind and that impacting songbirds and other migratory birds.
Sure.
Certainly, particularly also bird birds. I understand just recently there's been reports of golden eagles and bald eagles, and some numbers being killed by wind turbines.
Yeah, those are great questions. Let me, if I can go back, let me go back to the wind map, and I'll just show you what we've done in Ohio. on that because that's a great question. It's all the way back. There it is. So our mission is both environmental and economic. We were part of a $250,000 study along the North Coast, particularly the counties at the western basin of Lake Erie that you're referring to, because we have at the mouth of the Maumee River, which is right here, that's the North American flyway, migratory flyway. And you're referring to the Black Swamp. Ohio was a swamp. They once sent an army out of Columbus to take back the part that Michigan had taken up here, and they couldn't get through the swamp. They had so fortunately there was not actually a fight. They got about halfway, and then, so a lot of these towns weren't really settled till later in the 1800s. But the birds are along here. Faye and I just drove along Route 2 yesterday over Sandusky Bay, and you can see a Davis-Besse nuclear plant sitting there. And you can see the Camp Perry, which has got a giant solar array, which doesn't do anything to birds. And we saw a couple small wind turbines. But yes, so what happens when they're laying out a wind farm is they do an avian study. And they, in some places in the US, they actually shut down wind farms during migratory times. The reality is that when you look at bird kills, very few now occur per turbine in the United States. Our biggest problem in Ohio is actually the bat, the endangered species, the Indiana bat. And they still can't figure out why bats can't see wind blades when birds can. We have another map like this. We have 500 eagles nests in Ohio, and they're protected. We have archaeological things. So when they lay out a wind farm, they have to know all of this. On this cover, that farm family is part of a bird study, a bird kill study, and so somebody comes out and walks around. The problem with estimating bird kills, you have to know what the critters are that pick them up and take them away. So there are all of these things. They killed a lot of birds in Altamont Pass. And the biggest thing they've done in the wind industry, when you look at those first wind turbines out in California, they run like an oil derrick. So a hawk would perch and it'd see a rabbit and would fly right through the blades. Now they're just a pylon, and birds generally can see them. And so you can get into this in great depth, and there's a lot of people working on it. So they're very sensitive when they lay out a wind farm. Some wind farms have actually not gone forward. I know at least one in Ohio because of the bat issue. So that is an issue. Of course, when you look at statistics, how many birds are killed by windows and skyscrapers, by cats, by power lines, I mean, the numbers are huge. So that's the defense of the wind industry, and we're sensitive to that. And there is an actual avian study, an environmental impact study that has to be done. And so the environmentalists are involved with that. So that, these are not perfect technologies. And that's one of the concerns. That's a good question. Yeah. Yeah.
So you had a state quiz before. I have our state quiz for you.
Uh-oh. John, you got to help me on this.
An easy one. Since this is an interfaith conference,
Yes.
which state in the country has the most houses of worship that are Energy Star certified?
I bet Michigan. All right. I'm going to remember that. Yeah.
I hear about the use of drones to harvest energy. Do they use any drones in Ohio to harvest energy?
Drones? Wow, I don't understand. What does that mean?
There's been an article in Time magazine about the use of drones.
The things that fly around? Yeah. Wow. I've not heard of that. We got Wright-Patterson there. What they're doing is using biofuel. We had a great conference about what the military is doing. We brought in the top person from the Air Force, and we have what they call the Green Navy. I mean, we've got our military, unfortunately in these desert wars are using solar. We're losing more people in these convoys that are hitting these mines, these explosive devices. And so if you don't have to move all this oil around, and you can put renewable energy, so it has a military use. The other thing the military is concerned about is climate change. When you talk to the top people, they have a whole scenario of what happens when the sea level rises. So, from a national security viewpoint, there's a whole argument I could make that we ought to be doing this for our own security. And there are a lot of military people who agree with that because, you know, we see it. And that's why I think a lot of the rest of the world is kind of ahead of us if you look at those numbers. Yeah.
I was at a conference recently, and the number I heard from military, there's an organization that in Washington, D.C. that does military climate change on a public policy level, and 1 in 24 convoys in Iraq and Afghanistan had a casualty because of moving fuel.
Yeah.
1 in 21. Every 21 convoys you can count on a casualty. By that physical impact of fuel, let alone cost and all that. My question is about going forward with the utilities.
Yes.
Where do you see the policies moving on that? Are they going to move? I think they're going to have to, but then.
I think they are. I think there are a lot of enlightened utilities that get this, and I think a lot of big corporations. I mean, we've got 120 Walmarts in Ohio. I know they're not real popular with a lot of people, but 12 of them have solar. Walmart has a plan to put solar on all of its stores in North America, and that's good because then Kroger's, which their headquarters is in Cincinnati, they have to kind of compete with Walmart. But the utilities themselves, I spent a good chunk of my life fighting the utilities as the advocate for residential, and I think what will happen is, and there's been a lot of things written about this, is the utilities are going to have to get into this business, and that concerns some people because when solar first started back in the 70s, this is kind of hard to believe, but you remember all those James Bond movies where they had solar from space and solar was going to do all these things. They had a bumper sticker in California that said, "Don't let them meter the sun." So the thought was that the utilities would take control of this and kind of figure out how to monopolize it at the time because they were monopolies back then. They're still largely monopolies, in my opinion. But I think we need to work with the utilities. American Electric Power has been tremendous. We were actually funded by Duke Energy. It's really interesting. In our state, the big coal utilities have been the friendliest to this technology. And we're seeing in our state moving from coal plants to natural gas plants. And so natural gas works very well with renewable energy because the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow, and a gas plant can be ramped up and down. A big coal plant, you got to keep it spinning. And so, what we're seeing now, the big thing in the utility industry, new additions are wind and gas, and retirements of coal plants. And of course, with these controversial, the EPA regulations have come down, and I noticed here in Michigan they've delayed, closing certain coal plants. We've got to still have baseload generation. I mean, my personal view is we need everything. We need to make it as clean as we can. We've spent a lot of time trying to clean up the coal plants. And, I think that, but I do think that, these jobs that we can create here and a whole structure here is possible. So I don't know if that answers your question because utilities are all so different and, yeah. One more question.
Yeah. I drove here this morning from Ontario, Windsor, Ontario, less than 40 minutes from here, less than 50 miles. And I would like to draw a little bit of attention what Ontario has done in the last 5 years. Ontario will phase out coal generation completely next year. All coal power plants shut down. They started a Green Energy Act and a program mirrored after the German program, which happens to be my own home country. And so they have engaged since 4 years in bringing renewable energy. The largest operating solar PV plant east of Mississippi is 90 megawatt in Sarnia. It's in operation just on your numbers. And as you show maps, maybe including Ontario or Canada, it's not such a far thing. Actually, you can cross the border in 45 minutes. And by the way, half an hour from where I live, we have a 10 megawatt solar PV plant in operation. So if anyone wants to see it from here, within 70 minutes, you can look at 10 megawatt.
What city or town is this?
That's in Amherstburg. And by the way, we ourselves out of Windsor have done 800 kilowatt solar PV implemented to date. I happen to operate a solar company as a German engineer in Windsor. We converted an old automotive factory talk about job creation. We took old automotive factory, converted it. We employ people. If you go to Tilbury, we have a large Siemens factory now making nacelles. CS Wind is making hundreds and hundreds of wind towers. Today, we have more than 500 megawatt of solar PV installed in Ontario in the last 4 years alone, and we have several gigawatt of wind installed. Just as another number, because I happen to be the German engineer, Germany today has 35 gigawatt of solar PV alone installed. That is 35,000 megawatt, okay? And that in itself is about 7 times all of Fukushima combined, Fukushima 1 through 6, okay? It's all possible. So
You still have
if
a
you
lot of
want
nuclear plants,
some
too.
renewable energy, please also include Ontario,
Yes.
because Ontario has done a lot.
No, it's interesting. Ohio has 11 million people, just like Ontario. But Ontario is a much bigger place. But those are great facts. I know there's a wind farm right across Lake Erie in Ontario. And
Shutting down all coal generation in Ohio would be a really nice long-term plan for the benefit of this planet.
yeah, I don't know how that happens in the short term. But yes, thank you. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. You get the award.
Okay. Oh, we're going to take pictures too. Don't run away.
Okay.
Thank you very much for such a fine presentation, and we'd like to present this for our appreciation. Thank you. Thank you.